So this video
Dun,
will
dun,
be 5
dun.
minutes of us. Did that feel like a long time?
Yeah, it did. It really did.
Father,
Sister, what's chapter 3?
the sanity of silence.
Yeah,
Or-
Sister, something that really came to mind when I was reading this chapter and after I got through it was a quotation from Pascal.
Okay.
And he writes, all of man's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
I would agree.
Can you imagine what happens when, think about a person today, especially someone, just like any average Joe you pick up off the street, and or like even just one of us. I mean, just if we just were told we had to go sit in a room by ourselves, nothing on the walls, nothing was there. We just sat in a chair and sat down. Like the art of Christian meditation sort of presumes the fact that we're able to enter into silence and recognize that there is someone else who wants to speak to me in silence, right? I think it was you who were saying God's first language is...
God's first language is silence.
Yeah.
If you can't be silent, you'll never hear his voice. And so often I hear people say, well, I never hear God's voice, or God never speaks to me, all that stuff. But then for the follow-up question and the challenge is, how often are you silent? How often do you sit still and do you allow him to speak to you? Right. Because his voice is a quiet whisper in the stillness of our heart and our soul and our prayer. And if we never can sit still, and if we can never put our phones away and all that stuff away and our books and everything, and like give him that space to speak to us, no, we won't hear his voice. But if we're constantly filling all of our time with some source of entertainment, be it secular or spiritual, I guess, then we don't hear his voice as clearly. Mm-hmm. But we have to sit and invite him and say, I'm here.
There's sort of a fundamental stance that we take when we enter into silence, and it means that I am reducing myself and letting myself be kind of drawn away, but I'm still like actively present. I'm actively attentive, right? I'm trying to pay attention to what's going on in that silence, but but then it's saying like I'm silent for the sake, like I'm anticipating the speech of, I'm anticipating the speech of God. I'm anticipating what he wants to say to me, and I'm sacrificing my time, and I'm sacrificing my space, and I'm sacrificing the fact that I have the ability to speak and to fill myself with distractions, and I want to allow those things to kind of wistfully go away, gently kind of leave those things, and say, God, I put myself in your presence. I acknowledge that you are working, you are speaking, and help me to listen to your voice, right? Coming into relationship with this one, as we said in the last chapter, who's always looking at us, always sort of attending to us, right? And so, that silence can sometimes be a really scary thing.
Yeah.
So,
and it can sometimes or often be very difficult.
Yeah.
So silence is important for our spiritual life and our relationship with Jesus, but also in the love that keeps us sane. Saint Therese says, the book says about Saint Therese that there was this situation between her and another sister, and it ended up with the superior being woken up in the night, and the other sister blaming it on Saint Therese. And so Saint Therese had a desire to defend herself, but walked away without saying a word. Why? Because in the moment, God had revealed to her that something more important was at stake. I had a great desire to defend myself. Happily, there came a bright idea into my mind, and I told myself that if I began to justify myself, I would not be able to retain my peace of soul. And so often, like Father and I talked about in the last chapter, so often we're concerned with what others think of us and how others are receiving us, and how we are acting towards others and what they think of our actions. But how often is God asking us just to be silent, to not defend ourselves, to walk away, to eat the piece of humble pie, and to keep our peace of soul. Because often when we defend ourselves, it comes from a place of pride, of wanting to prove that it's not our fault and we're not the one at fault, and we're not the one who should be blamed, and this wasn't our idea, and all of these things. And so to just walk away.
Yeah, and I think I think part of it is a question of like how secure we have become in who we are and what the truth of the matter is, and how confident we experience just the fact that God is always seeing us and can love us in the place where we feel like we've lost, or can love us in the place where we feel like we've been maybe defeated or wronged. And to know that, okay, it's not like it's not like she's advocating for us to be like doormats and just be like, okay, yeah, just let the whole world kind of like walk over you in a sense. But I think what she's saying is that there are moments in our lives where there are perhaps like small things that just want to nag away at us. And it's like, I could really win that battle if I wanted to. It's not going to affect too much in the outcome, whether it's this way or that. But I think to myself, like, this is something that I could kind of lash out right now, and this would kind of, to prove my point, perhaps, but that perhaps in that moment, maybe there is a sanity to be found in just saying, I know what the truth is. I know that God sees me. I pray for the growth of virtue for both myself and for this other person. And I don't even want to have the sense of competition between them and myself in any sort of way, but just want to, I'm going to like let this one fly, or like, I'm going to let this just sort of, I'm just going to let this like walk and just kind of like, we'll see what happens. And allow like wisdom and God's providence and the fact that God can love me in that place of where I feel like I've lost, and it can become the source of a greater sanity and a greater security in who we are, because we know that God still got us, and it's not that my sense of security is dwelling upon the fact that I have to win in every small little skirmish of in relationships with others, and whether that's coworkers or people in family, or with just even amongst friends.
Yeah. And I think that we're able to do that more and more easily when, and this quote is from the last chapter, but when Jesus's face is our only homeland, when that is where we find our greatest identity and our greatest comfort, when we know that we are loved because of who we are as a son or daughter of God, that we can let those little things go, that we can let those little disagreements or those little times that we could prove ourselves, when we can walk away from them and keep that peace in our soul. And so when we become more open to the Holy Spirit and more comfortable in who God has called us to be, that we can walk away from those things.
And the scary reality about it is that often requires us to immerse ourselves into some times of silence.
Yeah.
And really allowing the Lord to speak in those places of our hearts, giving us that firm foundation, the rock on which to build our sense of security and the sense of our perspective on reality and others. And it will draw us to be able to have a greater respect and love for others as well, to see the potentiality of sanctity in the other people in our lives, and to wish for that and to pray for that for them as well. Well,
all right.
Fantastico. We're now going to move on to chapter 4, which is the sanity of loving freely. Stay tuned for more.
Yes.